North Pole Hotline, Mrs. Claus here.
My family needs winter styles now. Can Santa come early?
Our workshop isn't open yet, but Old Navy is.
Old Navy?
Yup. Right now, in stores only, get 50% off all outerwear, all sweaters, and all jeans.
50% off all those styles?
Plus 40% off everything online at OldNavy.com.
What if we can't wait to wear it?
Buy online and pick up in store for free.
Who needs Santa? I've got Old Navy and OldNavy.com.
Holiday your heart out with 50% off all outerwear, sweaters, and jeans at Old Navy. Offers valid 11/24 and 11/25. Exclusions apply. See store for details.
Blog Talk Radio.
You are listening to the Book and Verse Bible Study. Yes, the real deal Bible study with Minister Akaiha. She'll be bringing you the Word of God, which is the letter of God, to you. She has been anointed and appointed by our Heavenly Father for such a time as this. We will uncover what really happened in the Garden of Eden. Who is Cain's father? What is the unpardonable sin, and can we commit it? How did Cain find a wife if Adam and Eve were the only two in creation? This show will discuss these topics and many more. So get your Strong's Bible Concordance and let's study the letter of God.
Well, good afternoon, Royal Family. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's Minister Akaiha here. And we're definitely working on what was civilization like, what was the true Israelites, who are the true Israelites, where are they today. We're also going to be taking a look at the ancient Egyptians, the Kemites, where all civilization began. I know it might be hard for you to understand or wrap your mind around it, but we hope Brother Aswar Casey can help you with this. That's what we're going to be listening to, a little bit of his work today. And so let us just get right into the show. We talked a little bit also last week about the great Maafa, the Africans' Holocaust. A lot of us don't really get into that. We're also going to take a look at the Thanksgiving, the take-giving. It wasn't Thanksgiving, it was a take-giving. So we're going to be doing a little piece on that. But our great disservice is the fact that we really don't understand where Christianity and the symbols and the myths come from. So let us take a listen to Aswar Casey as he brings us some truth this afternoon. I hope that you're having a blessed and wonderful Sabbath, because that's what it is. So let us start right about a couple of seconds right into the show.
People to snap out of this psychosis that we're in. That we had no future, that we had no past, that we came from, as the Bible biblically refers to us as heathen. And I fight back on that every time I hear it myself. But what is it going to take, brother? And I know you've been doing the work. You done put the miles in. What is it going to take for our people to snap out of this inclusion, this illusion of inclusion? And I look at the politics today. And we see how we're being treated in Africa, in certain parts of Africa, where they're shipping guns in to kill us off. And in our inner cities, the same thing is going on. So I just can't understand why we should be sitting back waiting for something that's and I know you're going to touch on it, brother. And keep up doing what you're doing, brother. I say, and anything I can ever do, please, I'll be there when you call.
Thank you, my brother. Well, keep in mind, the reality of it, if it took 2,000 years to get into this, it's going to take 2,000 years to get out of this. We as an African people in the Western world, specifically where we are as Africans here in this country, have been out of physical slavery for approximately a little over 147 years. So that's 147 years. Now, we are still in mental enslavement. Now, when we start to build institutions to help educate, to liberate, then that's when we'll start to find our way. But we still feel that we can build churches on every corner, but we can't build our own schools and institutions. When you see other ethnic groups come here from other places, the first thing they start to do is build their own institutions to educate their people and even employ their people. We have been caught into this slave mentality that we still have got to always look towards Europe Europeans because of the culture of slavery. The slave only looked to the master for everything he needed. And we still do that to this very day because we are still functioning in a slave culture. Now, I know that's hard for it to deal with, but that's the reality. If anyone can prove me wrong, then prove me wrong. What culture have we been in this country? Many things that we interact with each other. In many cases, it comes out of a slave culture. Not the culture of our experience of who we are as an African people, where we came from, our culture. You know, there may be some culture that we see there, but for the most part, a lot of that culture that we interact with each other and how we interact with each other was due to the slave culture. So this is what we have got to start to do, what we're doing right now.
Thank you, brother.
Educating the community. Our Brother Carl's show comes on, and what does it say? Knowledge is power.
Oh, yeah. My brother, we're about to start a little.
So as we are listening here, of course, we're doing a little piggyback for Dr. Aswa Casey as he's explaining to about the situation of the mindset of the African. If it took 2,000 years for us to get like this, it's going to take 2,000 years for us to get out of this. I hope and pray not. But we're still in sleep. A lot of us are in deep slumber.
I don't know. I'm just. Are you a Christian? Do you believe in God? Are you an atheist?
I'm not a Christian of the Western world or any sort of type of any fashion.
Okay, so you don't, so you're not an agnostic either, right? You know, so you do believe in God.
Well, first of all, let's get clear on some things here. The reason why the world has the whole spiritual idea of God came from African people in the first place. The Western world would not even have an idea of God if it was not for African people. The very fact that we say Amen at the end of our prayers, okay, many of us don't realize that is an African deity. That is an African God, to start with African people, that was taken by the Greeks. The Greeks are the ones who took Amen up out of Africa, and this is how we got Amen in our prayers. When we go to Timothy chapter 6, and it talks about Amen. Now, keep in mind, the image of Amen in ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt was always jet black. He represented the invisible spirit in all of us, the invisible spirit that permeates throughout all the universe. Now, here, physicists are talking about dark matter that's all around us, that's part of us, that's inside of us, it permeates throughout all the universe. And it's interesting that in Timothy chapter 6, it says that who alone has immortality, dwelling in unapproachable light, whom no man has seen or can see, to whom be the honor and everlasting power. Amen. So, African people, we are a very spiritual people. The problem is that our representation of God in the angelical realm is in a European image. As peace be upon him, another Grand Master teacher, Dr. Clark, would say, what Europeans did was colonize the afterlife. So our whole mental representation, every time we think of God, or we think of a white God, we think of white heaven. Why? Because we see white angels and all these things that they've created. The ministers go to a white seminary school to learn a white theology. So, of course, when you start talking about the spiritual stories that existed in Africa thousands of years ago, especially that I revealed to many brothers and sisters that I take back annually every year on temples and tombs, now they're totally oblivious to. They know nothing about, in many cases, I'm not talking about all ministers, but many ministers, they know nothing about the information I'm talking about. You guys excuse me because I'm suffering from a very bad cold right now. All right, so of course they're going to be in conflict, okay, because their whole Western teaching of a white theology, okay, a Western version of Christianity. In some cases, they don't even know about the African Christians, okay, about the African Gnostics that I talked about, that you have to be your own Christ, okay, and those who fought against tyranny of the Romans, and like Cyprian, who got his head cut off, okay, and like many other Christians, okay. We don't know about why, when we look at the Romans who were persecuting Christians, they don't tell you that they were persecuting African Christians. Where did Christianity start in the first place? Alexandria, Egypt. Why Alexandria, Egypt? Alexandria, Egypt is the place where they have thousands of scrolls, okay, then they built this Alexandria library, It is now burned down by the Christians, like it is believed was burned down by Theodosius in the 4th century A.D. But where do they get these scrolls? From ancient temples that are still there that we go to every year, like Ipit-Asut, that is now called Karnak. Also, Ipit-Risut is now called Luxor, the Temple of Dandara, the Temple of Hered-Ru, the Temple of Menefer, the Temple of Inu. These were places that Aristotle plundered for Alexander, robbing the ancient tombs. It took thousands of years to create this knowledge from our empirical observation of Mutnechet. There they housed those thousands and thousands of scrolls in the Alexandria Library. This was Alexander's wish. This is the sacred knowledge that African people created that took them thousands of years before the Western world was even in existence. The fact that we even write 2012, we're only adhering to a Western time. We're adhering to Augustus Caesar's time period. How can you count time down and then start time back up? At least that should make us think about something. So, of course, when there are ministers who are thinking outside, the European Western point of view, but like I always say, he who circumscribes your circumference determines the diameter of your thinking. So if we let the Western world circumscribe our circumference to think that nothing else existed until the Europeans and the Western version of Christianity, as well as the other religions, it's not just doing Christianity, but Judaism, Islam, and Buddhism, and Krishna, all of these things would not exist if it was not for the fallopian tube of the Nile Valley that gave birth to spirituality that led into the religions of today. Part, the umbrella of the Western Church is a white seminary school, that one goes to, to learn a Western theology. And that is primarily based off of the Western version of Christianity, for the most part, based off of the ecumenical conferences that created the Western Christianity that I talked about, starting with the Conference of Nicene in 325 A.D., and dealing with Chalcedon and Ephesus, which is the one that I talked about earlier, where they de-Africanized, the goddess Aset, the prototype of the Madonna and Child, and the creation of the European Mary and Jesus. Now, I know that's hard for people to understand, but even if you just look at something very simple, Carl, Jesus is Greek. The Gnostics were the key people group of early Christians, in Egypt, who were like a conduit, during that time, who drew from the ancient spiritual world of our ancestors and went back thousands of years, and they are the ones who understood the spiritual meaning. That's why the Romans persecuted all of them, because they did not want the world to know how the Western world developed their ideas from which you see on those temples and tombs of ancient Egypt and ancient papyruses and scrolls that I talked about. In fact, when they took and unearthed, we go through this area of Nag Hammadi. Nag Hammadi is an area on our way to Attu that I talked about earlier, which is the world's first holy city that I talked about, of the world's first Immaculate Conception. But going through this area called Nag Hammadi is famous because it was an Egyptian who was traveling and found some of the earliest Gnostic writing. This is how we know about the early Gnostic writings and about their early spiritual teachings. And this is what the Western Church, the Byzantine Romans, did everything to make sure that none of the Gnostic writings would be part of the biblical Bible that they were creating at this time, because it had the spiritual understanding of what the Christ represented, and what I talked about earlier, what the Christ represented, that the Gnostic Christ, the Gnostics understood, or the Gnostic Christ understood, that this was about a spiritual development that we all have within ourselves. It was not about the deification of we see as this Jesus character. The Gnostics, as I said, are the black Gnostic Christ. They held that every man and woman, they saw that we had our own divine spark within us for our own spiritual development. That spiritual development was a development of your ka, your spirit, who the Gnostics called the Charis, who the Romans called Christ. But the Romans at that time were into the spiritual enslavement of humanity. And through the spiritual enslavement of humanity was through the deification of themselves. So they created a Serapis Jesus. And that the image of that Serapis Jesus is the image that permeates the Western world and America to this very day. It started during the time when they created it. So they feared the fact that if if the people understood that they all are a Christ, meaning that when you look at a Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, these men were their own Christ. They rose up their spiritual development, okay? They knew they were going to die. They knew they were going to be killed. But because of what they were teaching, their car, their spirit, this is what made them a Christ. This is what a Christ is. This is what the teachings of what our ancestors taught thousands of years ago. And that personified in the earliest teachings to go back thousands of years. That earliest teaching was Asar, Aset, and Haru. And Haru personified that Christ that we all had to become, our own Christ, okay, to rise up against tyranny and oppression, to rise up and develop our own spiritual development. And this time of the year, of the winter solstice, was to go through what they refer to as a kames, a spiritual birth. And this is but unfortunately, we can't see anything related to a spiritual birth because we're caught in material madness right now. And this is the basis and foundation of the Western church, is based off of a physical resurrection, that you will rise up out that grave in your physical body and go into heaven, your flesh and your blood. This is morbid. This is the Romans teaching. Where the ancient spiritual kames was based off of a spiritual birth. Your spiritual body that they referred to, that once the ba, that they referred to as the soul, and the ka, okay, which is the spirit. Once that came together, you became a kames, a spiritual birth. And this is what caused your whole spiritual ascension. But it started in your mortal life now through your own spiritual development. And this is what the Romans feared, that the Gnostics were teaching, that our ancestors took thousands of years to document this spiritual understanding. We are an ancient people. We African people were not just standing around waiting for Europeans and other people to come. So when you look at the various Krishna, okay, born of Immaculate Conception, that's a takeoff of ancient Egypt as well. When you look at Buddha, so that story goes around the world. When you look at Quetzalcoatl, okay, long before the Spaniards came there, that also is Madonna Child. How did it get there? That was carried. That spiritual story was carried. Like it was carried into Greece and Rome and became the Marian Jesus that we see today, a corruption, even though corrupted from Asar, Set, and Haru.
Let's go to...
All right, so there, now we got it. I think he broke it down very, very clearly. I thank Brother Aswad, Casey, for bringing us that message today. We're going to do another little piece, and then our show will be done for today. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to take any phone calls, but you know you can reach me at area code 224-531-1122, and you can also reach me during showtime. And if you are listening live on the show, the number is right there where you can call in. As soon as you call in, I can click you in for your comments. It's been a very interesting show today about the myths of Christmas, the symbolization. I don't think we came in at the first part where he was talking about the Christmas tree and how the tree was worshipped in ancient times by the Greeks. And it was the only tree that would grow in the dead of winter. And they worshiped that tree. That's why you put the tree in your house, and when you go under the tree to get your gifts, you're bowing to the tree. There's so many symbolisms that we need to really, and myths, that we really need to take a bite and look at, chew on it, see how it feels, do more research, as I am doing at the same time. You know, there's the whole origin of all these holidays. Where did they come from? I think last week we did a little piece on Halloween, you know, and we were shocked to find out that it was a barbaric situation. Even then, go back and check out the show. I don't want to spend any time on this show talking about it. I'd like for us to get back into what we're listening to now about the symbolism and how we all have the Ka, and we are all Christ-like. And when you notice that you are God-like, man, it gives you a whole different concept about life, doesn't it?
Black people that I'm a god, that they look at me like I'm crazy, okay? And when I pull out Psalms 82:6, which says that I have said that ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High, they simmer down. why are we as black people scared to claim our black godliness and black goddessness? We are the original people on this planet. And in closing with my comment, I always read Francis Cresswell saying chapter about the Christmas tree, which is really a symbol for the cross and the black man's private parts. When you decorate that tree, Brother Carl and my brother, the first thing that usually goes on that tree is the balls, which is representation of the black man's private parts. What I'm getting at, during our forced enslavement, these Christian heathens would cut our balls off of the black man while he was hanging on the tree, and the Caucasian woman would take the testicles home for souvenirs, today known as Christmas gifts, okay? This is truth. You know it, brother. Then when they got rid of the tree, they burned it, just like they used to burn the black man in a pit. Now, tree hanging started during the Roman era, and the so-called Khazars, erroneously called Jews, was part of that tree hanging. Acts 10:39 states, it says that, and we are witnesses of all things which he did both in the land of the Jews and in Jerusalem, whom they slew and hanged on a tree. And when I was growing up, and I'm closing, they had 4 Christmas lights, okay? They was black, they was red, and they was green, and they had some orange in there every now and then. I'm 62, bro. I'm telling you some facts. Now, if you look at this Christmas mess, I call it X-mess. What color are the lights? All white. You don't even see the brown reindeer no more with that fairy tale. Everything is white. Christmas lights, Christmas trees, all the characters. And black people, we got to get away from this garbage. It ain't nothing but fairy tale, and ain't nothing but heathenistic, hellacious things to control our minds, and it's time for us to wake up. And my question to you, my brother, do you believe in a leap year? I'm Aquarius. How can a person believe in a leap year? Okay, this is 2013 coming, and if you believe in a leap year, would this leap to 2014? Could you explain that to me? Because I'm a little bit into astrology and astronomy, which the black man, the black woman invented anyway. And I'll get off the phone, and brother, keep spewing that truth, good brother. Peace.
You had a whole lot there. We still on, Carl?
Yeah, we're still on here. We're still.
All right. Well, keep in mind, when we look at the Julius Caesar calendar and the Gregorian calendar, these are all Roman calendars. And keep in mind, the world wouldn't even have a calendar if it was not for African people who made the first calendar. One of the areas that I go to in Kemet, and I take our group to, is in Kamumbo. And in fact, a lot of things that we talk about, Brother Carl, I reflect to a lot of the reliefs in ancient Kemet over the years. And here in Kamumbo, you see carved in stone one of the world's earliest calendars. And this is, like I said, long before the Julius Caesar's calendar and the Gregorian calendar. And this calendar was based off of the heliacal rising of the star Civil Septa that the Romans called Ceres and the Greeks called Sothis. And it's the heliacal rising of that star that gave them the time of 4,236. When you add on to that, at least we should be writing 6,252. Why should we be writing 2012? Because we're adhering to somebody else's time. Europeans have always come to power and changed time. Even George Bush, okay, I think, what did he do? Change the clock forward, backwards? So the time is really, not in time at all. When we think about, where we are, but we have to go back to how our ancestors calculated time, and that time was based off of stellar time, cosmic time, scientific time, not based off of the creation of mystical people and characters and so forth.
Brother, a question I was asking, when you go back to Egypt, and you go to Alexandria, Cairo, and the museums and that trip along the Nile, do you show the folks that you take with you, do you show them these things inside these temples?
Oh, without question. In fact, anyone who's listening to the program now, you can go to YouTube, Kemet Nu, that's KEMETNU, okay, 6,240 I have there. and you'll see a lot of the clippings. I'm lecturing right there at the pyramids, temples, and tombs, or you can go to our website at Kemetnu, again, KEMETNU.com. And there we go under the little black boxes to your left, view videos in Egypt. And there I have several lectures where I'm lecturing inside of the pyramids and different places and tombs and so forth. And again, so if a person cannot go with us, at least they can journey there through the visual documentation that we have there. And then, of course, a lot of the information that we're talking about now, Carl, The African Origin of Christianity is a DVD we have on there. That DVD is a DVD that's documenting all the information that I'm talking about in relationship to what we're talking about now. And it's very well in detail with a lot of the documentation from the field research. Okay, especially in the Roman Catholic Church, okay? A lot of these rituals came out from ancient Egypt, okay? When we see the incense, the burning of the incense, and the priest, okay, shaking the incense, this was done when the priests walked through the temples of Egypt, especially when you look at the Temple of Karnak, or that our ancestors referred to as Ibn-Asud. Here you have 134 massive columns. We can imagine when they walked down that nave, they had the sistrums, where they would shake the sistrums, and then they had the people shaking the incense. So that's all part of an African tradition. In fact, when we go to Ethiopia, to this very day, in those ancient churches of Ethiopia that we go to in Lalibela and other areas, these monolithic churches, you still see the priests there using the incense, okay, just like they did in ancient Egypt. When they came through the building into the sacred places, they would walk through these areas, with the frankincense and myrrh and all the various scents that of incense that they have. So this tradition is still going on. And like I said, we'll be leaving for Ethiopia on the 27th of this month, going to Ethiopia, where brothers and sisters can see some of the early African churches that were built there. It still baffles the Western world of how these structures were built. But of course, now they see the magnificent structures that were built in Lalibela. Then, of course, Europeans have come up with the fact that, well, Africans in Ethiopia didn't build this. Some Knights Templars actually built this. This is in Graham Hancock's book called The Sign and the Seal, where he actually literally put in there that Africans didn't build those churches, that the Knights Templars came and built the churches for Ethiopia and then went back to Europe. But this is part of the psychopathic racism, that anytime you see something great in Africa, it had to be done by somebody else. Deep into volcanic rock, 40 feet down, and dug out into these structures that you see today. There are 11 of these churches in the area of Lalibela. So, this is a magnificent place that we go to annually every year as well. And we see that when you travel to these areas, when I first traveled to Ethiopia back in the early 80s, you see the Black Madonna that they had in the churches.
So we're getting close to the end of the show, so I'm just going to do a quick summary on what we've been listening to thus far. Talked about how Malcolm X and how Dr. Martin Luther King were actually messiahs in their own right, because they fought for freedom for our people, and they gave their lives knowing that they were going to lose their lives in this struggle. So, we all have the Ka and the Ba in us, the spirit of the Christ, and so it's very interesting how everything has been whitewashed and changed, and so that anything that comes out of Africa is some type of paganistic, and they're worshiping of animals. It was not any of that. It was showing us exactly how they communicated with the heavens and how they communicated with our God. And so I hope that this show has been enlightening to you. I hope that you will take the tour, as Dr. Asar was saying, that they go every year, June, July, and August, and they also go then to Kemet. And then from there, they go on in December to Ethiopia and do more studies. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's show. I hope that it's been a blessing to you.
Thank you for listening to Minister Akaiha. We hope that this teaching has been a blessing to you. You can visit her on her website, www.bookandverseBiblestudy.com. And while there, find out how to reach Akaiha on Facebook and Twitter. Remember, Akaiha will be coming to you every Sabbath, Saturday at 3 p.m. So tune in every week to be empowered and informed. So no matter where you go, take God and care with you. We pray that God will continue to bless you so that you may become a blessing to others.
Ugh, this phone drives me crazy.
Excuse me, I'm the Sprint intern from Sprint. Try my new iPhone XR with an amazing liquid retina display.
This is amazing. Mind if I snap a few photos? Look at that color. I love this display.
I'm gonna need that back.
Switch to Sprint and get iPhone XR 64 gigabytes for $0 per month with an eligible trade-in and a Sprint Flex lease. Visit a Sprint store, sprint.com/iPhone, or call 1-800-SPRINT1.
Phone $0 per month for 18 months after $31.25 per month. Credit applied within 2 bills. If cancel early, remaining balance due. Excludes tax. Subject to credit. $30 activation fee. Coverage and offer not everywhere. Restrictions apply.
North Pole Hotline, Mrs. Claus here.
My family needs winter styles now. Can Santa come early?
Our workshop isn't open yet, but Old Navy is.
Old Navy?
Yup. Right now, in stores only, get 50% off all outerwear, all sweaters, and all jeans.
50% off all those styles?
Plus 40% off everything online at oldnavy.com.
What if we can't wait to wear it?
Buy online and pick up in store for free.
Who needs Santa? I've got Old Navy and oldnavy.com.
Holiday your heart out with 50% off all outerwear, sweaters, and jeans at Old Navy. Offers valid 11/24 and 11/25. Exclusions apply. See store for details.